In Peru, protesters rally in front of the Spanish company REPSOL in Lima on the second anniversary of the spill of some 12,000 barrels of oil that contaminated the northern coast. In the United States, former President Donald Trump won the National Republican primary elections in the state of Iowa. And in Palestine, Israeli shelling against Gaza killed over 130 civilians in the last 24 hours. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Tuesday in Colombia, the extension of the bilateral and temporary national ceasefire between the government and the Central General Staff of the former FARC-EP entered into force for a new 6-month period. In this sense, the Office of the High Commissioner for Peace reported that through Decree 0016 of January 14, 2024, signed by the Minister of Defense, Ivan Velázquez, orders the suspension of offensive military and police operations as well as acts contrary to what is established in the protocol of rules and commitments agreed at the peace talks table. It should be emphasized that according to the new provision, the parties may agree on new objectives of the bilateral ceasefire aimed at strengthening the peace process, deepening the territorial transformations and replacing the illegal economy, environmental protection, social participation, and humanitarian protection of the civilian population.
What we are fundamentally interested in is a cessation of violence against the population, civilian population, and we call this international humanitarian law. This is the main objective and a guiding principle of peace, that among others, we will also discuss in Davos, because it needs international support, which is the transformation of the excluded territory. Today, in the hands of illegal economies, in territories of economic prosperity that have to be in legal economies.
In Panama, members of the United People Alliance for Life rally in front of the offices of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry to demand the closure of the Panama Mining Company. The civilians demand the immediate closure of the company's operations in order to stop the environmental damages, as well as justice and sovereignty for the country. Reports from the Environmental Advocacy Center highlighted the consequences that the closure of Panama mining could bring, which so far have not been revealed by the government. However, specialists detail that already in the mine they are observing accumulations of water with intense blue colors, similar to that of copper sulfate, a situation they warn could generate environmental problems. In Ecuador, social movements expressed their concern about the increasing level of militarization in the country. Through a joint statement, the organization World Beyond War and the Coordinator for Peace pointed out that the military measures imposed by Daniel Noboa's government do not favor a climate of security, and that on the contrary, they help to increase the levels of violence. They also demanded that national sovereignty be respected and that foreign military troops not be allowed to enter the country. Since last Tuesday, the executive declared a state of exception and of internal armed conflict following violent acts in prisons and streets of different areas. A law firm sues REPSOL for $1 billion for its involvement in Peru's largest oil spill in 2022. The executive director of Pogus Goodhead, which is prosecuting the lawsuit, Tom Goodhead, commented that the lawsuit was filed in The Hague, where a company that owns REPSOL's subsidiary in Peru is registered in connection with the 2022 spill in which 10,000 barrels of oil were spilled into the Pacific Ocean while oil was being unloaded at the refinery. The Peruvian government described this incident as the worst ecological disaster in its history and criticized the transnational for not paying the fines imposed for its serious misconduct. Dozens of artisanal fishers protest in front of the Spanish company REPSOL in Lima on the second anniversary of the spill of some 12,000 barrels of oil that contaminated the coast of northern Peru. Wielding banners against the oil company, the protesters demand that the company clean up the seabed and provide financial compensation to the approximately 3,000 people affected. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro addressed the population on Monday to deliver his usual annual message to the nation. From the seat of the National Assembly in the protocolary hemicycle of the Federal Legislative Palace, the President presented to the deputies and the country his annual report and accounts for 2023. Maduro celebrated the support of the revolutionary forces that took to the streets to show their support to the government's administration and the Bolivarian process. Likewise, the Venezuelan president congratulated the members of parliament for having discussed and approved 77 new laws which, as a whole, gave a floor to a legal structure that has allowed the country to emerge in the midst of the economic and social difficulties imposed by the sanctions of the US and the European Union. Likewise, he thanked the National Assembly for having called the consultative referendum on the territory of Guayana Esequiba in order to take action on its territorial defense.
Today, all Venezuelans, and even more so with the discussion and prompt approval of the organic law for the defense of the Guyana Esequiba, today we have a popular mandate, a special and safe plan to be tangible throughout the national territory, to make tangible and true the slogan that is in the hearts of our boys, our girls, our men and women. The son of Venezuela is born in the Esequibo.
The president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, also referred to other issues. Let's see some more details. Maduro expressed that $22 billion, including 32 tons of gold, are still seized in London, the United Kingdom, and accounts frozen and blocked throughout the global financial system. He also stated that national production has increased to supply up to 97% of the products distributed by the local supply and production committees, known as CLAP, with 97% produced in Venezuela for more than 7 million families. The president explained that the total losses of the national economy were an economic massacre, stating that the total losses of the national economy in both the public and private sectors in terms of the fall of the gross domestic product between 2015 and 2022 were $642 billion. Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. Leaders of Argentina's trade unions demanded that the legislators in the plenary session of the commissions to reject the presidential decrees of Javier Milei's government in their entirety. In the meantime, representative of the General Confederation of Labor, the Central of Workers of Argentina, and the Trade Union Federation of Health reaffirmed their participation in the national strike and the mobilization for the Congress to be held on January 24th. Meanwhile, the unions, through a debate before Congress, pointed out that the Milei administration's measures are anti-union and demanded that the legislators vote against the new administration's proposals.
This is a starting point to support the delegation of powers for 4 years, something never seen in our Argentina, never seen in the world. The privatization of all public companies is proposed, repealing and leaving aside a strategic patrimony, eliminating the split side formula, which I want to clarify here. It is true that this formula goes backwards, but it is a formula that guarantees an update, and what we cannot do is to leave at least a bad formula. But it must be a formula not to the discretion of the adjustment, because this is what is intended.
In this context, union leader Hector Daer also made reference to the penal code included in the presidential norm, warning about its repressive orientation against a right protected by the Constitution.
The reform of the penal code calls our attention because it does not speak of security. Ladies and gentlemen, it speaks precisely of how to repress workers, how to repress those who make visible the degree of injustice and inequality in our country.
In this context, on Monday in Argentina, a federal court issued an injunction against a case of price increase derived from the application of the emergency decree of the President Javier Milei. The judge, Martina Fons, ordered a medical insurance company to readjust the corresponding family plan fees in favor of one of their affiliates, even without effect the increases applied based on President Milei's emergency mega decree. The case involves a 78-year-old woman who filed an appeal in court against the medical insurance company due to the sharp increase of 40% for the month of January and another 29.5% announced for February. Furthermore, in her ruling, the judge asked for the executive decree to be annulled and declared unconstitutional. And on Monday, the president of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel, received Sergei Glaziev, Minister of Integration and Macroeconomics of the Eurasian Economic Commission, at the Palace of Revolution in Havana, the country's capital. Accompanied by the commission that has worked with the Cuban counterpart in intense days, the minister informed the head of state of the scope of the third meeting of the parties. He highlighted the importance of all the plans and projects proposed. In addition, he also underscored the willingness to expand the economic and commercial relations between the countries that make up the mechanism and the island. For his part, the Cuban president stressed the importance of expanding relations with all the countries of the region.
For us, it's a priority to continue advancing, expanding, and consolidating relations with the Eurasian Union, to develop all the plans and programs that we have proposed, which were addressed today in the Commission, and to expand economic and trade relations with all countries of the Eurasian Union, because we have them very concentrated in Russia and Belarus. But for us, it is important to continue strengthening relations between institutions such as Chamber of Commerce and others between our countries.
The Minister of Integration and Macroeconomics of the powerful bloc ratified that Cuba is a strategic partner for the region.
Cuba for us is a strategic and loyal country. We agree in most of the positions both in the economic and political level, and we will also favor from every point of view our commercial and economic change.
On Monday, thousands of Haitians took to the streets to protest against the government of Ariel Henry due to the serious humanitarian situation that the country is experiencing. Mobilizations took place in different cities such as Ocap, Jeremy, and Petit Goâve, among others, after former Senator Guy Philippe made a call for civil disobedience. 14 years after the earthquake that devastated the Caribbean country, the Haitian people are on general strike in protest against the multiple crises affecting the population, especially in terms of security and access to basic rights such as food and health. Nowadays, it is estimated that violent paramilitary groups control approximately 80% of the capital Port-au-Prince, a city with 2.5 million inhabitants. Of these, hundreds of thousands have been displaced from their neighborhoods and are internal refugees forced to live in stadiums, schools, or public squares. On Monday, former United States President Donald Trump won the national Republican primary elections in the state of Iowa. Citizens who went to the polls despite the low temperatures that hit the north of the country overwhelmingly chose Trump as their candidate. In this sense, with 96% of the votes counted, Trump received 51% of the support, while Florida Governor Ron DeSantis came in second with 21.2%. Donald Trump emerges as the favorite to lead the Republican Party in the November presidential election. It should be noted that the former president faces 91 criminal charges and 4 lawsuits, one of them for subverting the 2020 election. On the other hand, Trump is also facing efforts in more than 20 states to get him off the ballots. Democratic President Joe Biden recognized Monday that Donald Trump is the clear frontrunner to be the Republican nominee to the U.S. presidential election. For his part, President Biden officially declared in April 2023 that he will seek a second term in the November 5th election. Current ruler owns the title of the oldest U.S. president in history and will be 86 years old at the end of a second term. Biden has used his first 2024 campaign speeches to warn that Trump poses a grave threat to American democracy, citing his refusal to accept the results of the 2020 election and to condemn political violence. The Republican candidate, for his part, has criticized the president, whom he has called the worst president in the country's history. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. More than 130 Palestinians were killed after Israeli attacks in the last 24 hours in the Gaza Strip. Civilian targets continue to be targeted by the Israeli international sources, and the inhabitants announced that there is no safe place in Gaza. Likewise, for the fifth consecutive day, telecommunications have been suspended, which greatly interrupts the work of the international press trying to show the truth of what the Palestinian people are going through after the wave of attacks and bombings by the occupation forces. After more than 100 days of aggression, the death toll exceeds 24,000, mostly women and children. The Gaza and Health Ministry, in its most recent report, states that the number of missing people is more than 8,000, while the number of wounded is over 60,000. The Israeli government ended the intense bombardment of the northern Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant announced the end of the high-intensity fighting so that the Israeli troops can continue with the ground operations that are being carried out on a smaller scale. Gallant detailed that the Israeli forces will also end the intensive phase of the fighting in the south of the Palestinian enclave. The minister added that Israeli troops have cut off roads and tunnels leading to Rafah, a town bordering Egypt. Various United Nations agencies operating in the Middle East announced that Israel is preventing the entry of medicines, pumps and fuel to guarantee water supply. The Zionist government rejected at least 18 humanitarian missions. The UN agencies reiterate that the lack of water worsens the sanitary conditions. Without fuel for distribution, it is impossible to guarantee sanitation and hygiene. The risks to health and the environment increase exponentially. Although Israel agreed to allow the entry of 19 humanitarian missions to the north of the Palestinian enclave, only one has actually been able to enter since the beginning of the year. A platform of more than 50 South American jurists will sue the United States and United Kingdom governments for being complicit in Israel's genocidal operation in the Gaza Strip. Wigos van Rensburg, the lawyer leading this initiative that already has allies in Washington and London, says that they will be guided by the case filed in South Africa before the International Court of Justice. The alliance of lawyers has begun to prepare the lawsuits, each one separately, against the two countries. The action will be brought before the International Criminal Court, which already has several cases against Israel for genocide. The initiative maintains that the impunity with which these countries acted in Iraq cannot be repeated. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme country director in Palestine said needs are rising faster than the agency is able to respond.
Exploring all possible solutions, but none are sufficient in the face of obstacles. There are people starving in areas, and we are not able to give basic food for. The needs are rising faster than we are able to respond. We need to be able to bring in more supplies, and we need safe access to reach people everywhere in Gaza, not just those who are close to the borders. We need a long-lasting ceasefire to stop the suffering.
The Iranian government met with its Indian counterpart on Monday to discuss bilateral and regional issues between the countries. The meeting between Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Abin Abdollahian and his Indian counterpart Subramaniam Jaishankar was held at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs building in Tehran. With this meeting, the parties seek to strengthen economic and trade relations. This is the second visit of an Indian delegation to the Islamic country during the era of the 13th Iranian government. The first visit was made to attend the swearing-in ceremony of Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi. The Iranian foreign minister also visited India last July at the invitation of his Indian counterpart. On Tuesday, authorities in Mauritius assessed the damage brought by Tropical Storm Belal as it rolled away from the Indian Ocean island nation. Belal claimed the life of one person in the remote tourist paradise, left thousands without power, flooded buildings and caused traffic chaos, with cars submerged under the deluge of water or piled up on streets. Flood levels substantially decreased on Tuesday and authorities were able to clear up debris from the streets. Mauritius Weather Services announced early Tuesday it was raising its alert to the maximum level 4, but in an update several hours later it was said the warning was lifted and a safety bulletin was now in force as the storm was moving away from the nation. Benin received its first doses of a vaccine for malaria, the leading cause of infant mortality in the country. Health Minister Benjamin Hunkpatin announced that his government had received 215,900 doses of the RTSS vaccine. The vaccination campaign will start in a few months with the initial objective of immunizing some 200,000 children under 2 years of age. Faustin Zhao, immunization specialist at the UNICEF office in Benin, explained that children will receive 4 doses at 6, 7, 9, and 18 months. In this context, Benin joins several African countries that have launched vaccination initiatives against malaria, following in the footsteps of Cameroon and Sierra Leone. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.